The CEO was horrified to discover that the wife he had been searching for all these years was working as a waitress in a bar. Overwhelmed with excitement, he called out his wife's name. When she saw him, tears filled her eyes. She never expected that the husband she thought about every day was still alive. But just as she reached out to touch his cheek, the CEO grabbed her hand and asked, "Are you disappointed to see that I didn't die?" Confusion washed over her face. She couldn't understand why her husband hadn't come looking for her all these years. It turned out that a few years ago, they were still a couple envied by everyone. They were happily living abroad, awaiting the birth of their child. Unexpectedly, their peaceful life was soon shattered. One day, the woman suddenly received news that her family had gone bankrupt. Her father was also beaten. The news threw her into complete chaos. She hurriedly called her husband, but there was no answer. So she left a letter with her best friend to deliver to her husband. Then she hurried back to her home country. Before she could reach home, she heard that her husband's plane had crashed. She was so shocked that her legs gave out. However, the bad news did not end there. Her father also died from his injuries. Losing both of her closest loved ones at once was more than she could bear. Then a sudden abdominal pain hit her, and she collapsed to the ground. Before she knew it, 5 years had passed. Her son had been born prematurely and had developed a chronic illness. He would need surgery to recover. Yet the exorbitant medical bills left her at a loss. She had no choice but to work multiple jobs every day to save for her son's surgery. That day, when she went to the bar to sell drinks, she unexpectedly ran into the husband she thought had died years ago. Longing filled her heart as she just wanted to confirm she wasn't dreaming, but she was met with his deep resentment instead. It turned out that her best friend had tampered with the letter. The friend lied that the woman had rejected him for being poor, saying she intended to abandon him and return to her wealthy family. Upon hearing this, her husband was filled with grief and rage. From then on, he harbored hatred for his wife. So when he met her again, the CEO was overcome with a mix of emotions. Seeing him so enraged for a woman, his friends became intrigued. They suddenly became excited. They forced her to kneel and apologize to them in front of the CEO. Watching her husband remain unmoved broke her heart instantly. But thinking of her son's huge medical bills, she could only kneel miserably and ask, "Why a husband I haven't seen in years would treat me like this?" At that moment, her husband's phone rang. She heard him address the caller with tender words. She assumed that her husband's change in demeanor was due to a new lover. In desperation, she left the room without looking back. But the CEO was not willing to let her go. He hurriedly instructed his assistant to look into her address. As he was on his way to her place, he suddenly spotted her on the main road, dragging luggage with her child in tow. At that moment, the assistant received a message. It turned out she had been evicted because she couldn't afford the rent. The CEO ultimately couldn't bear it. He bought the house she had been renting and became her new landlord, and informed her that she could continue living there. Mother and son hurried back home. Just as they were relieved they wouldn't have to sleep on the streets, suddenly there was a knock at the door. Curiously, the woman opened it and saw the CEO standing there. She quickly closed the door again, fearing that the CEO would take her son away. She hurriedly hid her son. Then